Hey, and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here I'd like to cover my Bard Songblade build for Module 29. This is accompanied by a document which will go over everything you need in order to put together this build, in case you just want something in reading format. Overall, this build will get you maxed out in all of the damage stats you need, along with 105,000 item level. This is completely solo, so it's perfect for groups with, say, random players. You're not relying on anybody to give you certain bonuses. However, with regards to group optimization, there's a lot of flexibility. You can switch some things around in order to make the most of those group bonuses and improve your damage further. However, the most important part is to actually use the right powers. This setup here is for multi-target. You can see here in the document as well, we have highlighted in red boxes exactly what abilities you want to be using. So before going anywhere, you want to make sure to play your Tailwind Mambo just with these notes. And there you go, you have the buff. Now you can play it with certain keybinds, for example, copy and pasting this, which will be in the video description below. Just paste it in your chat. And then when you enter the perform mode on PC, hitting tab, you can then press like H as per that key, and it instantly casts it for you. Now be aware, you can very readily use Steel March instead of Tailwind Mambo. The only real difference is the effect it has on your at-will. One is going to be like a cone attack, and the other is going to be this little whirlwind, so a long line attack basically. Now for the ballads, I generally just put them in quick play, and that way even if you're in combat, you can instantly play it and instantly go and cast your other abilities. Whereas if you had it played manually, it would take you that bit of time. And even if you played it with the keybind, which you can, you'll still get this delay where you can't do anything after having cast it. Therefore, I just run it on quick play. You do lose out on a little bit because you won't trigger this damage bonus or say this crit severity, but you shouldn't need the crit severity. And as for the damage bonus, you should be able to trigger it with, say, Tailwind, and then when you're going into your next fight, you're using the Ballad of the Witch. And yeah, everything's dead. Like, Bard is super powerful. Even with just like these at wills, you're hitting them in like 2 hits, and then you go over to the next group. You have a great gap closer with lunge there, and everything just melts for you. It's awesome. And you have performer, where you'll be able to use like encounter powers back to back pretty reliably. You can now cast your ballads outside of combat as well, so you don't have to worry about being restricted when you can cast it. And you're just super powerful as a bard in multi-target and single target. The only one that should beat you in multi-target, to be honest, is like a rogue. Potentially a wizard if they have their daily power. But again, use this setup. Make sure you're having your songs like either Steel March active or Tailwind Mambo. Mainly you want to just have those two because they give like projectile, which is based off strength, and then Steel March, which is physical based off strength, meaning you would have that damage boost here of like 7.75% versus magical is only like 3.25%, and that would be Blaze Flamenco. That's why you prioritize using those two, and just always have those buffs up. And then your secondary one is the ballad, and for multi-target it's Ballad of the Witch here. And again, just you're super powerful. In terms of your daily power for multi-target, you're just using inspiration here to give you that buff, and if there's an ally nearby, they'll also gain it. Keep in mind, you can absolutely use Contrae instead of Lunge for extra multi-target damage on top if you feel you need it. Out here in the zone, I prefer the Gap Closer, but if you're fighting more tanky enemies that don't die so quick, just tap Contrae and you deal all that damage around you of that 500 magnitude. Super effective. Ultimately, I believe that covers how to play and what to use for multi-target. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. But now we're going to jump to single target. that is going to require a bit more of a specific rotation and to pay close attention to what abilities to use. Fortunately, all you need to do is switch your powers out using your ad libitum, lunge, and then also your dancing lights. You'll be using lore as your primary daily power. You don't need to switch out any of your other abilities except, say, Ballad of the Hero to the quick play slot instead of the witch. Again, in the document you can see that all here. You can potentially switch redoublement over to martial performance, but I just prefer it because otherwise you can easily miss out on some extra hits that ad libitum could give. I have a habit of switching between different encounter powers rather than just sticking to using one, and so I can easily just lose out on hits, and so I just go with redoublement. Especially with lag involved, it can be the safer option. Now, for single target, you need to have a specific rotation in order to maximize your damage output. That is displayed here in the document. You can see exactly the different setups, and it depends on your tactician's precision, which is a mount insignia bonus here, which you need to be using to maximize your damage. Ideally, you have two of them. That way you can gain that cooldown reduction when you use your daily power, allowing you to maximize your burst within the artifact call. An artifact call is a 10-second window where you start with everybody casting their artifacts, and everybody uses ones that increase the damage against the target. Again, you're in a single target fight, so all that damage against that target for 10 seconds will be massively increased, up to like 4 times the normal amount of damage, and that's where you need to dump all your burst. So you need to make sure you're making the most of it and have this kind of rotation. Now you can see when you have no tacticians, you're limited to just this. Ideally, you'll save some like performance procs of encounters for the artifact call as well, so that you can just be using encounter powers for the 10-second rather than needing to resort to, say, some at-wills. And additionally, if you do have to resort to at-wills, you can be better off just casting Ballad of the Hero again during the artifact call, as long as you have it on quick play. It will allow you to instantly cast it and then instantly use the finale, which is 800 magnitude. That is why you see that with the rotation, like Hero's Finale, then you go into Ballad, then you use Hero's Finale again. You have the time to do that if you don't have, say, other performer procs with improvised encounter powers. Same with when you have only one tacticians, you can do that there. And then if you have two tacticians, you can delay using your daily power lore until after you've used all of those ad libitum hits. Now, you need to be quick after you cast your dancing light to cast your artifact in order for the debuff to affect it, because its damage is delayed a bit before it actually hits, and therefore you can have the time to cast your artifact, and then the damage debuff effect will be applied to the power. So make sure to follow those rotations and you'll do super well as Bard. Outside of the artifact call, it's pretty much just spam. Make sure you have your Tailwind Mambo up or your Steel March, and then make sure you have your Ballad of the Hero up as much as possible, and you're good to go. The rest is just using the encounter powers when they're there, saving them for the next artifact call, and then spamming them out for that 10 seconds, including the mount power, and you can throw in your belt item too. I don't have that in the list here, but your belt item would be with your mount power. That's usually the peak time in the artifact call. So ideally you'd have, say, the owlbear figurine. We currently don't have the owlbear figurine here, so we're using, say, the dragonfire, and that one is more damage over time, so you'd use the Dragonfire right after you cast your artifact. You can take it a step further and stack Elemental Melody, especially before you enter a fight, gaining up to 30 bonus magnitude. You can do that on, say, a Pinata, and then have all those three, but the problem is you cannot maintain that because they do not refresh. Therefore, it's not that viable to cast Blaze Flamenco because you're losing quite a bit of damage by then only having the magical damage boost. So you could just switch between Seal March and Tailwind Mambo. That's no problem. They're both going to be physical based, and then you can at least gain 20 magnitude from that. There's a bunch of optimizing you can do, particularly on certain content when you have some time to get stacks and other times you need to be doing damage. Overall, you are one of the best for damage dealing, and you're just super hard hitting, and there's no real excuse for you to perform poorly, other than perhaps if you like struggle with playing melee. There are some fights which have a heavy focus on mechanics which cause you to move away from your target, leading to a lower uptime on attacking, and therefore you may lose damage through that. But again, you are one of the best in the game right now. So let's jump to our race and ability scores. So I personally go with the Wood Elf just because it gives us the critical strike and it looks more human. Like, I don't want to look like a Dragonborn, I don't want to look like a Gith, and not really a Tiefling either. There are plenty of other races you can make work, as long as they have, ideally, a bonus to your damage stats, which are these first 5, or bonus to damage. As for the ability scores, we want to be going with strength and dexterity. Then we go to our stats. You can see, like, out of combat, this is what we're running with, but as soon as we get all those gear procs, you can see we'll be getting those maxed out at those sweet 90%. That is through the gear bonuses, giving us stat over time, like this helmet, these armor piece, these arms, and then bonuses like acute senses and the lightning flash all add up, and you will have nice maxed out stats, maximizing your damage potential. Out of combat, however, again, you'll be like that. Just as a quick like gear switch, say you're not running into like fire theme maps, you'd want to switch these boots out, and you'd want to switch, say, this shirt out. Ultimately, you'll want to have boots that would give you a damage boost, like the sharp long boots or the rusted iron leggings. They're the easiest, or you could even have some other zone specific ones like wild space, or even some bonus combat advantage ones if you miss that. As for the shirt, switch it over to the infused one. That will give you some cooldown reduction. You can see it in the collections just here. The gear we're currently wearing is all there, and it also shows you where you're actually getting it. Be aware, in multi-target, you could very well switch the helmet, since that's going to take quite a while to stack up, to something else. If you're running with a group who has like Tutor, Portobello, Flapjack, then yeah, you don't even need this helmet, and you can run with, say, the Dark Maidens ones for action points. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it so much. You generally won't even have combat advantage in multi-target fights, particularly when solo, and so it won't do a whole lot. But you could switch Minsk out to like the Golden Cat, and you already have pretty much all the combat advantage there you need. Plus, if you're in fire theme maps, you get an extra boost through the weapons. But we move on to the modifications here. We just have 2 crit severity, 2 accuracy, and 4 combat advantage. That's just all those, as you see here, in the armor pieces and in the neck, waist, and rings. Then we go to our enchantments. This is what we use, and in defense, it honestly doesn't matter. You can have garnets there, you can just have spare enchantments. Offense, it matters. Utility, a garnet. Rage of Flames, Devil's Precision. The Rage of Flames you can switch out to other damage bonus ones, depending on what content you're running, whether that's against dragons, fiends, etc. You want to have the lightning flash here, you want to have the recharge speed. In multi-target, you very well may want the movement speed to get around quicker. Whoever's at the mob group first generally gets all the damage. And then for the artifacts, you just have these 4. As per my document, you can see exactly where they are all coming from. And so we jump to our boons. We can see with our campaign points, we put them just all in our offensive slots here, then get the movement speed. You may very well want, if you're running the new dungeon, the damage against fiends, and then advanced boons, you want like Forte, action points, recharge speed, and then you want bloodlust, life lessons, and blessed advantage. If you have more points, you can put in Blessed Resilience, you can put in Lingering Medicine, then like all the defensive ones and hit points, etc, etc. As for the Stronghold, get your accuracy one there, ideally defense, and then if you're gonna die in tough content, make sure you got Revive Sickness. Otherwise, movement speed or mount speed if you're just out questing. Moving on, we jump to our companions. This is what we currently have, and a quick note on the summoned companion, you can pretty much use whatever that's good. You can check my companion document, it's linked below. There's all of these ones here, but I do recommend prioritizing like a party buffing companion. They can usually be a little bit more valuable. As for multi-target, I do highly recommend the Minotaur Mercenary, but again, there's a lot of viable options. As for our companion equipment, we have this stuff. It's just from the new campaign, Mountain of Flame. Then we have Acute Senses. You'll get it from many of other companions. Then Minsk, with Bigger They Are. Book Imp with those stats. Neverwinter Knight. Batiri, which we switch to the Spine Devil and multi-target. Just make damn sure you prioritize having the Batiri against bosses. And then Alchemist. If you do look at my document, you can see there's a bunch of alternatives to, say, the Book Imp. All of these will give the exact same stats. And yes, in multi-target, you can switch Minsk out to like the Phase Spider or the Golden Cat, as we mentioned, in order to give you some more stats, particularly to make up for this headpiece not going to really be giving you those. So moving on to our mounts, we have our current tab, and I recommend just a single target mount power. Ideally Bigby's Hand because it's physical. Then we have Dominant Force for the power. You will switch that out if you're within, say, a party. You can use like Mystic Aura, Runic Aura, and if your healers and tanks give you those, then you can run Ferocity. Just a little bit of an extra damage boost. Not as good as you might think via the tooltip. But for now, solo, Dominant Force is good. Then in our stable, we have this setup. So 2 Tactician's Precision, Enchanter's Hex, Warlord Motivation, and an Artificer's Enticement. You can see my mount document linked in the video description, and it shows you all what mounts actually give all of those bonuses. There are plenty of alternatives. For the insignias themselves, we have like 2 Aggression, 3 Skill, 15 Brutality. The colors, it's just all of these bonuses: rough AD, encounter damage, stamina, movement speed, crit severity. Again, for the single target mounts, I do recommend Bigby's, but there are these ones you can use for multi-target. You want to have like Space Guppy or Pegasus. Pegasus actually recently got fixed, so now it's actually very good, particularly because it's going to give not just you but everybody else a 15% damage boost. Just the damage isn't instant, and say the Space Guppy also has a daze effect, which will protect you by making the enemies not be able to actually attack you. But from there we go to the consumables. Here we just have Flask of Potency, Squash Soup, Ratatouille, and our Sunlord's Gift Elixir. We can use an Invocation Blessing for, say, like power and defense. Be somewhat useful, particularly if you don't have, say, your Forger's box maxed out. And if you're in a group with Raptors, you won't need the Forger's box. You could run with, say, a Bell of Empowerment to increase the damage of your companion. Ultimately, that is the entirety of this build. Again, document linked below with all of these sections. But we do finally want to go to group optimization. This will be important when running with a coordinated team, particularly in the endgame of Neverwinter right now. You will want to have an artifact that's actually going to support the team, and you can't all use the same one. That just doesn't work. And so you will want a selection of a few others, despite it, say, ruining your perfect stats. It's okay. But yeah, make sure you have a few on offer to be able to switch through in order to support your team properly. But you're also going to gain these extra boosts from your team, depending on what they're using. So like Pack Tactics, Mystic Aura, Runic Aura, Portobello, Flapjack, Tutor, Paladin Crit Aura, Tamed Raptor. Particularly the Tamed Raptor is like a massive boost that you don't really want to miss out on if your team's using it. So You can, like for example with Pack Tactics, switch some companion gear or jewels over to awareness for some extra survivability. If they're running Portobello, Flapjack, and Tutor, you can switch like acute senses over to like armor break, vulnerability, dulled senses to support the team with that, where then you don't need the combat advantage because you're gaining it then from those companions. With the Paladin crit aura there, you simply go and switch your Alchemist over to like the Dark Dealer or Book Imp. You don't really need to do that because you can already get maxed out on your stats. But if you do run the Tamed Raptor, you'll need to put the Tamed Raptor instead of the Book Imp here. And so you'll need to make up those stats. And so one way to do it is to switch the Alchemist over to the Golden Cat. Or if you have, say, Portobello, Flapjack, or Tutor, then you don't need to because you'll get the combat advantage there. And then since you have all that power, the Magma weapons are kind of useless to you because you don't need the stats they give, and therefore you just switch over, to using like Solarium, Mirage, Void Touch, any of those good damage boost ones. You can check previous videos. I have covered what weapons are good and in what areas. And then you can also switch your Red Dwarf ring over to like a damage bonus ring, because again, you don't need all of that power if you're running the Tamed Raptor. So it can be very useful to run the Tamed Raptor because you can again get extra damage via the weapons, via the ring, via a companion enhancement. It all adds up, particularly say using the 10% damage ring against dragons if you're there, or against beholders if you're in Zemnid, or against undead, or even simply to the sapphire ring. You'll gain a set bonus damage boost and an encounter power damage boost. But that is ultimately it for the entirety of this build. It will set you up with a very nice flexible build that should allow you to switch between multiple things and ultimately maximize your damage potential with getting you all those 90% stats without even needing to rely on the team at all. Plus a lot of good damage bonuses like companions, and your boots are damage bonus, your shirt is damage bonus in those fire themed maps. So hopefully this helps. Ultimately, how to play Bard and how to set up your character. You're currently one of the best damage dealers in the game. Not to mention, you also have a healer path, which is super powerful too. So thanks for watching. A massive thank you to all of these channel members for your extra support. And we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.